Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sabrina and I'm back with another Excel tutorial for you. Now, if this is your first time here and you're looking to develop your Excel skills, then start now by subscribing and hitting that bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can freeze panes to lock rows and columns in Excel. So freezing panes basically means when you want to keep an area of a worksheet visible whilst you scroll to another area of the worksheet. Okay, so if you look at my spreadsheet here, you can see I've got a table of data, which is basically a sales report. So I can see some sales figures here for the entire year. Now, if you look at the first two rows, so row 1 and row 2, these two rows, my first two rows basically displays the headings. Okay, so row 1 displays the title of that spreadsheet, and then row 2, I have the headings for each column. Okay, now the problem I have here is that when I scroll down this worksheet, so as I scroll down, you'll see that I can no longer see those headings, which is not very useful. Okay, because especially when you've got a large database, you may struggle to understand what each column is representing without seeing the headings. So one of the things you can do is you can lock these rows in place so that when you scroll down this worksheet, you'll always see those headings visible at the top. So in order to do that, there are three different ways to lock columns and rows. Okay, and I'm going to go through each method. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to go up to the View tab. So you click on View, and then you want to go to the Window group. And here you'll see a command called Freeze Panes. Now, if you click on the drop-down arrow on the right of Freeze Panes, now before I click on that, you can see a pop-up box has appeared just as I hovered my mouse over that command. And this pop-up box tells you that this command will freeze a portion of the sheet to keep it visible whilst you scroll through the rest of the sheet. Okay, so if you click on the drop-down arrow now, you can see you've got three options. So the first one is to freeze panes. This is basically where you can keep specific rows and columns visible whilst you scroll through the rest of the worksheet. The second option is to only freeze the top row. Okay, so this will literally only freeze or lock the top row in your spreadsheet and keep that visible whilst you scroll through the rest of the worksheet. And then the last option is to freeze the first column. Okay, so again, that will just lock the first column in place and keep that visible whilst you scroll through the rest of the worksheet. So I'll go through all three options and just so that you know the difference between them. So the first one is to freeze specific rows and columns. So freeze panes, okay, you would use this option when you want to lock multiple rows and columns together. Okay, so for example, say I wanted to lock row 1 and row 2, but I also, along with the rows, I wanted to also lock the first column, which was column A. Okay, so what you would do in this instance is you would use the freeze panes option, but you need to select a cell that meets between the column and the row that you want to lock. So for example, in the example that I explained before, I want to lock column A. Okay, so I'm just going to go up to the Home tab and just highlight this column just to make it easier for you to understand. So I'm just going to highlight in that column in a bright yellow color. Okay, so I want to lock column A, and I also want to lock rows 1 and 2. So I'm just going to color that in a yellow color as well. Okay, so these are the two rows I want to lock, and this is the column that I want to lock along with it. So the cell, or the first cell that meets in between the column and the row is this one here. Okay, it's cell B3. So you want to select the cell that meets the row and the column that you want to lock in place. Okay, the first cell. So in this case, it's this one. So you would click on that cell. You would then go up to the View tab. You would then go to the Freeze Panes command. So just click on the drop-down arrow on the right of Freeze Panes, and then select the first option, which is Freeze Panes. Okay, and this will lock the columns and the rows that you wanted to lock in place. So what you'll find now is that when I scroll down this worksheet, rows 1 and 2 are now locked in place. So they do not move, okay, as you go down the worksheet. Similarly, if you scroll towards the right of this worksheet now, so if I use the scroll bar to scroll right, you'll notice that column A is also locked in place. So it's worked perfectly there. It's locked the rows and the column that I wanted. Okay, so in order to unlock or unfreeze, all you need to do is simply go back up to the View tab, go to the Freeze Panes command again, okay, and then click on the drop-down arrow, and the first option will change to Unfreeze Panes. So you would click on Unfreeze Panes, and that will just unlock all the rows and columns. Okay, so that's how you lock multiple columns and rows. I'll show you another example. So for example, let's say this time we wanted to lock rows 1 and 2, but we also wanted to lock columns A and B. Okay, so rows 1 and 2 are already highlighted in yellow. Okay, column A is highlighted in yellow. I just need to highlight column B, so I'll just go up to the Home tab and highlight column B in yellow. Okay, you don't need to change the color of those columns and rows. I'm just doing this to show you how to select the cell that intersects between both rows and columns. Okay, so in this case, the first cell that intersects between the row and the column that you want to lock is this one. Okay, that's the one that meets in between. So it's cell C3. So you select that cell. You would then go up to the View tab. You would go to the Freeze Panes command. So just click on the drop-down arrow on the right of Freeze Panes, and then click Freeze Panes. Okay, now what you'll see is that when you scroll down this worksheet, rows 1 and 2 are locked in place. So those rows, they do not move, they're visible. And if I scroll towards the right of this worksheet, you'll also see that columns A and B are both locked in place. They do not move as I scroll across this worksheet. Okay. All right, so to unfreeze, again, you would go to the Freeze Panes command, click on the drop down and select Unfreeze Panes. This will unlock all the columns and rows. Okay, now the other two options in Freeze Panes is to freeze the top row and to freeze the first column. Okay, so if you wanted to only freeze the top row, so in this case, that would always be row 1. Okay, you can just simply go for that command. So what you would do is, okay, so before I do that, let me just change the colors back to the original color. So I'm just going to go up to the Home tab and just undo the fill colors. Okay. All right, so now if you go back to the View tab, we're going to freeze the top row only, which will always be row 1. Okay, so in order to do that, if you only wanted to freeze the top row, you would go up to the Freeze Panes command, click on the drop-down arrow on the right of Freeze Panes, and then select Freeze Top Row. Okay, and that will freeze row 1. Okay, so you'll see that when I scroll down, that row is visible, okay, and locked in place. Okay, so that's what Freeze Top Row does. Now, if you wanted to freeze the first column only, you could do that also. So you could again go back to the freeze panes command, click on the drop down arrow, and then select freeze first column. Okay, now you'll see that when I scroll towards the right of this worksheet, only the first column is locked in place, okay, which is column A. But you'll also notice that if I scroll down this worksheet now, that top row is no longer locked. Okay, so you can only do one. You can either lock the first top row, or you could lock the first column. Okay, so you can only choose one of these two options. You can't do both of them together. If you wanted to lock a row and column or multiple rows and multiple columns at the same time, you would need to go for the first option. Okay, so let me just click on unfreeze panes to unlock everything. Okay, so this is the option you'll go for, which is freeze panes. So for multiple rows and columns together, if you want to lock them together, you want to select this option. But bear in mind that you need to make sure you select the right intersecting cell, the cell that meets in between the row and the column that you want to lock. So you would select that cell first, and then you would click on this command, freeze panes, to lock them in place. Okay. All right, so I hope that's made sense and it's helped. If it has helped, please do like and share the video so that it can reach out to more people. If you have any questions or comments, please do put it in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And also do consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on any new videos. And that's it from me. So thank you guys for watching my video as always, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.